He never meant to notice her that way. Not at first. It started like most of his Tuesdays, quiet, unremarkable, and a little too slow. The kind of day that drags, not because of work, but because there's no one waiting for you afterward. He'd stop by the corner cafe after his shift, same time, same seat, second table from the window, where the sunlight hit just enough to warm the edge of his cup. She worked there part-time, or maybe she owned it. He wasn't sure. She wasn't the kind of woman who talked much about herself. She just moved with a calm certainty, sleeves rolled up, hair loosely tied, a few strands silvering near her temples. The kind of woman who didn't need to announce her age because it wore her softly. He liked watching how she handled the smallest things, folding a napkin before setting it down, straightening the cup handles, humming faintly when the place was nearly empty. "Your usual?" she'd ask, already halfway through making it. "Yeah," he'd say, pretending to check his phone. "Long day?" He'd nod. "Something like that." That was the rhythm. Short exchanges, unhurried silences, the low hum of the coffee machine filling the space where words should have been. He told himself it was nothing. Just routine. But routines have a way of turning into something you depend on, like a small promise you never spoke aloud. One evening, rain blurred the windows. He stayed longer than usual. She sat across the counter with her hands around her own mug, not working, just being there. "You don't talk much," she said quietly. He looked up, startled. "Neither do you." That made her smile, the small, cornered kind that doesn't reach the eyes right away but lingers once it does. He didn't ask if she had someone. He assumed she did. Someone his age wouldn't have a chance. But assumptions are safe. They let you keep your distance while pretending you're not curious. When he left that night, he hesitated at the door. She was wiping the counter again, even though it didn't need it. Maybe that was her version of hesitating too. He almost said something, maybe about the rain, or how she always remembered his order, but instead, he just nodded and left. Outside, the street was slick and gold under the lamplight. His phone buzzed, a message from a friend. He said he was working late, but his location said something else. He frowned. It wasn't meant for him. Wrong send, maybe? But the name above the message, it was hers. He froze there, the sound of rain muffling everything else. His breath fogged the phone screen, thumb hovering, uncertain. For the first time, he wondered who she was texting about, and why that message had found its way to him. To be continued. He didn't mention the text the next time he saw her. He wanted to, it hovered on his tongue like a half-forgotten lyric, but she greeted him the same way as always, calm, composed, the world neatly in her hands. Still, something had shifted. She poured his coffee slower that day. Their eyes met for a second longer than usual, and that was enough to change the rhythm of everything. "Rough morning?" she asked, setting his cup down. He hesitated. "Didn't sleep much? Bad dreams?" "Just too many thoughts." She nodded like she understood, not just the words, but the pauses between them. He watched her wipe her hands on the towel tucked at her waist, fingers restless. A thin silver band glinted, not a wedding ring, not exactly. Maybe it used to be. "You ever get one of those texts that weren't meant for you?" he asked suddenly. Her hand froze midair. A second too long. Then she smiled faintly. "Depends on what it said. Something about a guy lying to someone. Working late." She exhaled through her nose, slow, steady. "Ah." He waited for her to explain, but she didn't. She turned toward the espresso machine instead, its quiet hum filling the silence. He didn't push. But in that silence, something opened, not between them, but within him. A quiet recognition. She wasn't untouchable. She was human. A little sad, maybe. A little tired of pretending not to be. When the last customer left, she came over with a teapot, jasmine, not coffee, and poured a little into his cup. "Try this," she said. "Coffee hides everything. Tea doesn't." He took a sip. Too warm. He winced, and she laughed softly. "I used to drink that every night," she said, almost to herself. Back when I still waited for someone to come home. He looked up, unsure if she meant to say that out loud. Did they ever? He asked quietly. Not really, she said, eyes fixed somewhere behind him. And when they did, it was already too late. The clock ticked. Neither of them spoke for a long while. He wanted to say something comforting, but nothing seemed right. Words would only make it smaller. So he reached for the teapot to refill her cup, hand brushing hers, barely a touch, just enough to notice. She didn't pull away. Something fragile and unspoken hung there, an understanding that shouldn't exist but somehow did. She smiled, faint but real this time. You'll burn your hand like that, she said. He smiled back. Maybe. Later that night, lying awake, he replayed that moment, the warmth of her fingers, the sound of her voice, the space between what was allowed and what wasn't. And he thought, I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. To be continued. The next week, he came later than usual. The café was quieter, dimmer, only the amber light above the counter still on. She was counting the till, her sleeves rolled up, tired lines softening the edges of her face. You're late, she said, not looking up. So are you. She smiled, small, distracted. I close up now. Cut hours. Fewer people come in this time of year. He hesitated near the door. I can wait while you finish. She should have said no. But she didn't. So he sat, same corner table, same chair, except tonight, the air felt heavier. He watched her move, quietly efficient, the sound of coins clicking, the soft sweep of a rag across the counter. Every sound seemed louder when neither of them spoke. When she finally sat down across from him, no apron now, just a plain cardigan, it felt strangely personal. You don't have to keep coming here, you know, she said after a while. I know. Then why do you? He tried to find the answer. Because I like how it feels here. She looked at him, searching, cautious. And how does it feel? Like I can breathe. That made her look away. Her hands wrapped around the mug, holding on a bit too tightly. A pause. Then, you're young, she murmured. You'll outgrow this kind of thing. This? Whatever this is. He wanted to argue, but her tone, quiet, almost resigned, made him stop. Outside, someone laughed in the street. The sound snapped the stillness. She flinched slightly, glancing toward the window. Was that your friend? He asked. She shook her head. My son's friend. They used to come here after school. He froze. Used to? She nodded. He's abroad now. Engineering. You remind me of him sometimes. That stung, gently, but enough. He leaned back, tried to smile it off. Guess that's not a compliment. She looked at him again, eyes soft but distant. Maybe it's not supposed to be. The silence that followed was unbearable. Every small thing, her breath, his heartbeat, the ticking of the clock, filled the space where they couldn't go. He stood to leave, hands in pockets. See you tomorrow? He asked. I don't know. Something cracked between those words. He hesitated, halfway to the door, halfway to saying something he shouldn't. Then she moved, brushing past him to lock up. Her shoulder grazed his arm, a simple, accidental touch. But it wasn't. They both stopped. Too close. He could smell the faint trace of her perfume, soft, clean, like linen and memory. She looked up, breath shallow, eyes flicking between his and the floor. For one suspended second, either of them moved. The air felt charged, not with certainty, but with fear of what might happen if they didn't stop. Then she stepped back. Good night, she whispered. It wasn't dismissal. It was survival. To be continued. He hadn't seen her for 3 days. The cafe stayed dark when he passed by. The closed sign hung crooked in the window, the chairs stacked neatly, as if waiting for someone who might not return. By the 4th evening, he couldn't help himself. He sent a message. Everything okay? No reply. So he walked past the market, past the same empty street, until he found her, sitting alone on a park bench, coat wrapped tight, watching a group of children chase a deflated ball in the distance. He stopped a few steps away. "I thought maybe you left." She didn't turn. "I needed some air." He sat beside her anyway, careful to leave a space between them. For a while either spoke. The streetlights buzzed faintly, and somewhere a dog barked, all those ordinary sounds of a world still moving, even when you're not. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. "I know." "Then why are you?" He let out a dry laugh. "Because I didn't know where else to be." That made her glance at him, brief, startled, like she hadn't expected honesty. He looked down at his hands. "I thought maybe you were avoiding me. After that night." "Maybe I was," she said softly. "Because you think I want something? Don't you?" He opened his mouth, closed it. Words felt too loud for the kind of quiet they were in. "I don't know what I want," he said at last. "But when I'm not around you, everything else feels dull." She exhaled, slow and uneven. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I don't know how to unhear them." The confession hung there, fragile, trembling. He turned to her then. Her eyes were glossy, reflecting the streetlight, not tears, exactly, but something close. "Do you ever think about what would happen if we didn't stop ourselves?" he asked quietly. She smiled, tired, sad. "Every time you walk in." A beat. The kind that stretches time thin. He almost reached for her hand, but she pulled her coat tighter instead, fingers trembling against the fabric. "I thought I was past this," she said, voice breaking slightly. "All that foolishness. The wanting. It's not foolish. It is, when you're old enough to know better." The children's laughter had faded. The park was nearly empty now. The night pressed closer, holding its breath with them. "I keep telling myself it's nothing," she whispered. "That it'll fade. But then you walk in, and it doesn't." He looked at her, really looked, the faint lines near her eyes, the way she bit the inside of her cheek when she was trying not to cry. He leaned forward, just enough that the space between them turned electric. Her breath caught, not from fear, but from remembering what it felt like to be wanted. Then she whispered, barely audible, "What are we doing?" He didn't answer. Because any answer would make it real. To be continued. He stopped going to the café for a week. At first, it was discipline, a quiet rebellion against his own impulses. Then it became hesitation. Then it became fear, of seeing her and not knowing what to do with his hands, his voice, his heart. By the 8th day, he convinced himself it had all been in his head anyway. That maybe she hadn't felt anything at all, just kindness mistaken for something else. But one evening, as he passed by the café, he saw her through the window. Not behind the counter this time, sitting at one of the tables, dressed neatly, someone sitting across from her. A man. Older. Well-dressed. Laughing softly at something she said. He froze at the edge of the street, half hidden by the parked cars. The man leaned closer, touching her hand briefly. She didn't pull away. He stood there long enough for the coffee in his hand to go cold. Then he turned and walked away, pretending he didn't feel what he felt, a hollow ache, like something small but important had gone missing. That night he tried to text her. "I saw you." He wrote it. Deleted it. Wrote again. Deleted. He finally settled on, "Hope you're doing okay." Then stared at the blinking cursor, and didn't send it. The next day, she came back to the cafe early. He knew because his friend, one of those who noticed too much, mentioned it casually. "Hey, your coffee lady's back. She looks different." He tried to sound disinterested. "Different how?" "Like she's finally sleeping again." That hurt more than he expected. He went that evening, but stopped short of going in. Through the glass, he saw her rearranging things, humming faintly, the same tune she used to hum when the place was empty. Only now, she wasn't looking toward his usual seat. Something had shifted. He stood there until someone brushed past him, muttering an apology. It jolted him, made him realize how ridiculous he must look, hovering outside like a ghost of something that never really happened. He walked away again. Faster this time. Later that night, he got a message from her. I didn't see you around lately. Thought maybe you moved on. He stared at the screen, pulse quick. Then typed back. Did you want me to? He waited. No reply. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 2. He deleted the message before she could even see it. For days after, he avoided that street entirely. But every time he reached for his phone, he caught himself checking if her number was still there. It was. Always there. And yet something between them had gone wordless, like the story forgot how to continue. I didn't feel heartbroken, he thought one night, lying awake. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. To be continued. It was almost closing time when he finally went back. The cafe looked the same pale lights, same smell of roasted beans, but something in the air felt finished. Like the ending had already been written, and he was just showing up late to read it. She was cleaning the counter, humming again. When she saw him through the glass, her hands froze mid-motion. Then she unlocked the door quietly. You shouldn't come after hours, she said. I know, he replied. But I didn't know when else I could. For a moment neither moved. He stood near the door, she stayed by the counter, towel in hand, both waiting for the other to blink first. I saw you the other night, he said softly. With someone. She looked down, then sighed. My ex-husband. He stopped by to sign the house papers. He nodded, relief and guilt colliding. I thought I know what you thought. She smiled faintly. You're not wrong to think it. I just didn't want you to. He shifted his weight, the sound of his shoes scratching against the tile filling the silence. You could have told me. I didn't owe you that, she said, not coldly, just honestly. He swallowed, nodded again. You're right. The quiet that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, of all the things they'd said without saying, all the ways they'd almost crossed the line and then stopped. She turned off the espresso machine, the hum dying down. You remind me of a time I didn't think would come back, she said. When everything still felt possible. He met her eyes. Maybe it still is. She smiled, small, weary. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise none of this means anything. He stepped closer, slow, cautious. Close enough to see the faint tiredness beneath her eyes, the way her breath hitched as he did. I don't know what this is, he said, voice barely above a whisper. But I keep thinking about it. About you. Even when I try not to. She set the towel down, hands trembling just slightly. You're too young to make a mess like this. Then let me make it anyway. Her eyes softened. Something flickered, the brief ache of wanting and knowing she shouldn't. Don't, she said. You'll regret it. Maybe, he said. But not tonight. He reached out, not for her hand, not for her face, just to brush a crumb from the counter between them. His fingers stopped halfway. She didn't move. Then she exhaled, slow. You always do that, she murmured. Hold back at the last second. He smiled, quiet. So do you. For a moment, everything was still, just the two of them, the hum of the refrigerator, and the faint smell of coffee that had long gone cold. Then she said, almost tenderly, You should go. He nodded, stepped back, opened the door halfway, and stopped. Will I see you again? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, maybe. A soft, human word, not promise, not denial. Just maybe. He smiled, a small, tired smile, and left. To be continued. Spring came quietly that year, softer mornings, slower rain. The cafe had changed a little. New paint, a new menu, fewer people. But the same windows still caught the same 8:47 a.m. sunlight, warm and gold across the second table from the counter. He still came by sometimes, but not every day. Once a week, maybe twice. Enough for it to feel like a habit, not a need. She still worked there, though less often. She said she liked the quiet mornings. Before the city wakes up and remembers it's late. They never talked about that winter. Not the night in the park, not the messages that went unsent, not the things they almost said. It all lived somewhere between them, not heavy anymore, just part of the air they shared. He would sit at his usual table, she'd bring him his coffee, no words needed. Sometimes she'd sit across from him for a minute, tea in hand, jasmine, always jasmine. Once, when he teased her for drinking it without sugar, she said, "I used to sweeten it. But I got used to the taste as it is." He smiled. "Guess that's what happens. You stop needing more." She looked at him then, really looked, and smiled back. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. There were no confessions, no declarations. Just two people who'd been changed by the quiet gravity of each other's presence. She still hummed when she worked, same tune, softer now. He still noticed her hands, the way they moved when she wiped down the counter, how her ring finger was bare but the skin still remembered something. Sometimes they talked about small things, weather, books, the broken streetlight outside. But every so often, a silence would fall that wasn't empty. It was peace. One afternoon, he came early. She was sitting outside on the same park bench where they'd once sat, the one by the rusted lamppost. She motioned for him to sit. They didn't say much. Just shared the thermos of jasmine tea she'd brought. "Still too hot," he said after a sip. She laughed, that same small laugh that used to end conversations before they went too far. "You still drink it too fast." "Some things don't change," he said. "Some do," she replied. A breeze passed. A few petals brushed against her hair. Without thinking, he reached over to gently brush one away. She didn't stop him. For a long while they just sat there. No tension now. No fear. Just the soft understanding that sometimes love doesn't need to be named to be real. As the sun dipped lower, she said quietly, "Do you ever think about how strange it is, how some people just arrive in your life at the exact wrong time, and somehow that's the right time anyway?" He smiled. "All the time." And in that moment, with her hand resting lightly on his, it didn't feel like a beginning or an ending. Just something that had finally found its own rhythm. He looked at her, the light